Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider, presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my old pals Evan Grant and David Moore. Fellas, the Michelin ratings came out. I know we've long awaited that, and I can't tell you how embarrassed I was to find out that Houston had 6 one-star ratings, Austin had 6 one-star ratings, San Antonio had 1, Spring, Texas, the suburb of Houston, had 1, and Dallas had 1. One-star rated restaurant.
Has anybody been to Tatsu?
No, I have not.
I have not spent my $185 a person to go to Tatsu. I will say I've been to multiple Bib Gourmand restaurants in Dallas. There were 7, and those are outstanding.
Listen, but before we go any further on this, check out Sarah Blaskovich's post from last night and her story on the Michelin ratings, because I think there's a lot of interest in it. I am going to a Bib Gourmand tomorrow night, Wednesday night, which I do think is the best Italian restaurant in Dallas, Nona. And so I was glad to see that they made the list. But it's weird that Nona and Lucia are both in the same Bib Gourmand category. I don't consider Lucia to be like a bargain.
No.
One, I will say that you are wrong. Nona is not the best Italian restaurant in Dallas. It is Lucia. And yes, the only thing I wonder about Lucia is, was it right on the cusp and they weren't going to give it 1 star, but they wanted to recognize it, so they wedged it in at Bib Gourmand because the price point is a little beyond what they now look. I guess you can get the 3 courses there if you get like the dates, a pasta, and like 1 bite of a dessert. You would probably come in on you.
Maybe you can get a deal. I was the only restaurants on the entire Texas list I've been to are Ola May and Barley Swine in Austin.
Yeah, those are wonderful.
Are the only ones.
Yeah.
But both are very good, excellent restaurants.
A lot of barbecue.
All the restaurants, the Rex, the Bib Gourmands, and the 1 stars.
I'm just talking about the ones that made the 1 stars.
Oh, okay. I've not been to any of the 1 stars.
Okay.
I don't think.
Yeah.
You know, the barbecue is interesting because you got the feel they like tacked it. One, they did barbecue, but didn't recognize any Tex-Mex, which makes you wonder where the judge. But having said that, you know, Goldie's, which is usually recognized as like the top barbecue in a barbecue state, was also a Bib Gourmand, but not a 1 star, which I believe 3 to 4 barbecue restaurants got.
Yeah. They did. They did recognize Texas for that. Basically, the barbecue. That was. I think there was 3 or 4 from the Austin area on the barbecue list, and the one from Spring was also.
The Spring
barbecue.
was That was the Corkscrew, right? I believe.
Yes, Corkscrew Barbecue. Correct.
At Texas Capital, we know that the path to greatness isn't for the faint of heart. It's full of chances and opportunities with no promises. We know because we help clients and communities achieve greatness every day. Texas Capital is a full-service financial services firm founded and headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Our customized solutions were built to keep your business moving forward. Please visit texascapital.com to learn more. That's texascapital.com. Texas Capital is the collective brand name for the Texas Capital Bank and its separate non-affiliate banks and wholly owned subsidiaries. For deposit products, member FDIC.
Hey, let's talk about a product that's got 1 star, but probably doesn't even deserve that right now.
All right. So the Cowboys had several humiliating aspects of that game.
You could say that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but between losing 34-6, that was bad enough. There were some decisions that were made that were very silly, and then there was at least 1 comment made after the game that was really silly. Probably 2, but one in particular made by the owner, which is no shock. But David, before we get into all that, I do want to just update everybody at this point on the injury situation because there have been some significant injuries for the Cowboys this year, and give us an idea where everybody's going to be and what's the update on Dak's status.
Significant injuries, mainly to their pride and self-worth. But physically, this team's really been hit with not just injuries, but injuries to their most crucial players for a victory, and that starts with Dak Prescott. It was pretty clear by the end of last week that the consensus was building that he would need surgery. He was leaning in that direction, went to New York on Monday to receive a final opinion. And if that opinion concurred with the growing consensus that he would stay in New York and have the surgery, just found out that is what's going to take place. The final doctors, the final opinion he got was yes, surgery is the best direction here. He will have surgery on his hamstring tomorrow and will miss the remainder of the season.
All right, that was no real shock there that he would do that. I have to say that the thing that always drives me crazy is when these things come up and happen, and when you've got this pulled away from the bone and thinking that, well, maybe we can just let this heal on its own. It seems like the worst idea in the world to me. Go ahead and get the surgery done and get this over with.
Yeah, and this is, look, now, I don't know what percentage was torn away from the bone, but I will say when you're dealing with a partial tear, the avuncular tear, which is what this was, a partial avuncular on the hamstring.
You just love saying avulsion and avuncular. You know it.
We know it. It makes me sound like I know what I'm talking about.
I think avuncular means like you're someone that we all really like.
Last night I had an avulsion of pasta with an arrabbiata sauce and lucia.
That's an emulsion. I'm sorry.
Oh,
yeah.
But no, so and don't know the percentages, what it is, but when it's a partial tear, it's about percentages, right? And there's a difference on whether it could heal on its own, whether it's 20% attached or it's 60% attached. And so when people say, oh, well, it's a partial tear, he doesn't need surgery, you don't know, because you don't know what grade you're dealing with and you don't know what's there. And clearly, no one has said this specifically, but from talking to people and kind of having explained around it, the reason he's having the surgery is because, look, as of last Friday, before it became clear he was going to need the surgery, I had people tell me, okay, not only has the decision been made about surgery yet, but at this moment, we don't even know when rehab will begin. Now, when I heard that, I figured, well, then certainly this is going to lean towards surgery, right? If you can't even say when you're going to start the rehab. And the issue was, you can say, okay, I don't want surgery. Let's heal this on its own so, Dak Prescott can return this season. Well, what happens when 2 to 3 weeks into the rehab, it completely tears off the bone at that point? And so clearly that was their concern, that whatever the partial tear was, not enough of it was attached to the bone to where once they got into rehab, it was going to heal on its own and reattach.
I hope people are not questioning this the decision for surgery. I mean, when you're talking about a quarterback's hamstring, I know that the doctor's creed is do as little as possible. But you're talking about a world-class athlete, and you're talking about pulling an essential muscle away from the bone. If the repair was suggested by a doctor, I think that there should be no need for further explanation.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the other ones now. We got DeMarvion Overshown, who was having a really good game before he got hurt. So the update is that he should be back perhaps this week.
They're encouraged by him. Yeah, they were still waiting to see some results, but they don't do anything today. And remember, they have an extra day. It's Monday. So that's either an extra day to prepare or an extra day to wallow in how bad they are. We'll let you pick whichever option you choose. But yeah, they go Monday night against Houston. So they won't even get back and do much until Wednesday. And they were encouraged that he should be able to return.
And Deron Bland.
Deron Bland's a tricky one. They activated his 21-day window. He fractured his foot in training camp and was on IR since the start of the season. This is another one of those. You can fracture a bone in your foot in many different spots, right? And it impacts greatly your timetable on return. Well, they did activate his 21-day window to return about 40 days ago, which you don't activate that window unless you anticipate when the 21 days is up, the player will be back on the active roster. But once he went once he started to practice again, the foot didn't feel right, and they halted they halted it, and he hasn't been to practice since. So from what I was looking at the other day, he's only had 2 days of practice since the start of the season, and those 2 days now were about that we're moving on. That was about 2 weeks ago, or 2.5 weeks ago, and he hasn't practiced since. And at this moment, he's not scheduled to practice this week. So this could be an injury where you look up and it's in December and he's still not back. And then at that point you say, well, do we even need to bring him back at this point? Let's just get this foot right and really see what's going on here.
Well, that was an issue for the Cowboys, too, on
Yes.
Sunday at corner. They've really struggled with the guys that have replaced him, getting production from them, consistent production. The amazing thing in that game, I thought, in the first half, that they had 5 sacks. A team was getting no sacks. And, of course, they got the return of Micah Parsons, and that did
Made a huge difference, yeah.
Yeah, you figured that'd make a difference, but he hadn't played very well before he got hurt. He hadn't had any production, didn't have any sacks before he got hurt. And he gets 2 sacks in that game, and between him and DeMarvion Overshown, that looked like a real 1-2 punch.
And I'll say he really opened things up for Overshown.
Yes.
Just his presence where you have to account for him, even if he's not right. Overshown has a lot of the same capabilities, especially from a speed standpoint. I'm not saying he's as good as Micah Parsons. He's not, but he's an ideal complement with his speed and his instincts to Parsons. So that is an encouraging 1-2 combo moving forward. Just like, going into the season, Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland were an encouraging 1-2 combo. But you didn't have Diggs last year with the injury, and now this year you don't have Bland due to the injury.
Yeah, speaking of Trayvon Diggs, the interception in the end zone reminded me so much of a Deion Sanders interceptions I once saw, where he wasn't even in the picture frame, and he comes back and makes the interception. He was so fast, and that's exactly what Trayvon did in that. It wasn't even his man. He was starting to go to his right, saw the quarterback Jalen Hurts, looking towards the middle of the field, turned and went back and made the interception. A tremendous play.
Yeah, and Zimmer was asked about that on Monday. The coordinators meet with the media on Monday and was asked about, that scheme that led to that interception. And he just smirked and he said, that was just Trayvon. That was just Trayvon going and getting the ball. He said that was a, spectacular play.
And that about covers the highlights, folks. And we'll move on now to the rest of the game, which, of course, was a ridiculous performance by the Cowboys. I got to tell you, we remember, of course, when Vic Fangio was the defensive coordinator with the Denver Broncos. This is in 2021, and the Broncos snuffed out the Cowboys in that game. And afterwards, Fangio said, nobody's playing them the right way. And so then that became a big controversy over, well, what the heck is Vic Fangio doing that's different from everybody else? And as time went by, a lot of that was laughed off. But by my count now, since then, Vic Fangio is 4-1 against Cowboys coach teams, or by Mike McCarthy coached Cowboys teams. So I would say that Vic seems to have that going for him, because if you look what happened to Cooper Rush in that game, as was noted by our crack staff afterwards, Cooper had played pretty well in relief of Dak, right? He had a decent quarter. And yet in that game Sunday, it was just, there was no shot to do anything. Every pass thrown was underneath. And one of the problems with Cooper Rush throwing those kinds of passes is that by the time that the ball gets out there to the wide receiver, there's about, 12 people on the wide receiver, because he just doesn't have the velocity to play that kind of game.
I have never seen this. I really do not remember ever seeing this in an NFL game where a starting quarterback had 23 pass attempts and averaged 1.9 yards on those 23 attempts.
It was miserable.
Average in the league per attempt. We're not talking about completions. We're talking about per attempt. The average in the league is 7. And if you're 7, you're just barely middle of the road. They were They weren't even.
It was pitiful.
They were like 1/3 of. I mean, it was.
And that's the thing. We all talk about that, how we hate that East-West offense, right? But they do that to set up the running game. There are reasons to do it, and I get it. It's like the old fullback dive from the '60s, right?
Yeah.
You have to throw these, but when Cooper is throwing those out there and he has no velocity on the ball, there is no way for that wide receiver to make that catch and turn and get up the field.
No,
By the time he catches the ball,
times, yeah, they went deep a couple of times, and his throws were flat, and they didn't reach the guy, and then it becomes then the whole offense constricts. I mean, talk about offense constrict. CeeDee Lamb led the team in receptions. He had 6 receptions for 21 yards. He just barely averaged more than 3 yards a reception, and there's like one time where it was like a 3rd and 6. And they're running a comeback route, and the guys are catching at 4 yards. Well, like you say, it's one thing to catch a crossing route or a slant at 4 yards where you can get some yards after the catch. It's another to run a hook pattern or a comeback and catch the ball with your back to the defense. You're never going to pick that up.
No, you're not going to do that. So that was miserable to watch that. I had to say it was good to see Trey Lance on the field. He didn't do anything to make you think he was the answer, but he certainly didn't do anything to make you think that you'd be any worse off with him than you would with Cooper Rush. At least he can run. At least he has some velocity on the ball. And I say all this, and it's purely for entertainment value because he's not under contract past this season either. You're not going to re-sign him.
Neither is Cooper Rush.
Yes, and neither is Cooper Rush. So it's not like you're getting even a look at the future with Trey Lance, right? It's just for pure entertainment value from my standpoint. I'd just rather watch Trey Lance play than Cooper Rush.
Well, you will get your wish before the season's over, but you won't. I don't think you'll get it before Thanksgiving. Especially they have you have Houston on Monday night, then you have a short week going into Washington, then you have a really short week coming out of Washington to the Thanksgiving Day game against the New York Giants. I think you will see Trey Lance. I don't think it's going to be before Thanksgiving, but if this team loses 2 of the next 3 or all 3 is on the table at this point, I think you'll see Trey Lance starting in December. I don't know what game, but my belief is that at that point, they're going with Cooper Rush right now because he does give you the best chance to win, and it's a shorter week. But if I will say this, if Cooper Rush has a game against Houston that was even comparable to what it was against the Eagles, at that point, why wouldn't you just go with Trey Lance the rest of the way?
Oh, I don't know why.
Because once you see Trey Lance, you may understand why they're going with Cooper Rush. But those are their options, and they signed a former Cowboys quarterback, Will Greer, back to the practice squad today. So he might probably see him at some point down the line.
Yeah, I'd rather see Will Greer. Bring him back. Yeah. Well, possibility of bringing him back as a backup quarterback. I mean, that at this point, you have to look at it like. Look, this season's over.
Oh yeah.
There is no way for this team to make a comeback. It is not making a comeback. So you have to look towards next season. And since neither one of those guys of those quarterbacks are under contract for next year, I would have to believe at this point that Will Greer, who could at least run a little bit, will be an upgrade over Cooper Rush. I mean, how many teams in this league? Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. But how many teams in this league have a quarterback that is purely a pocket passer, is not a guy that you want to get out of the pocket whatsoever? I mean,
Joe Burrow is one of the few, but he still gets out and does a little bit. And again, a guy early in his career, Hebert doesn't get out much either, but those guys have rocket arms and they're young. So
exactly. So that's the thing. You have to be able to do that at least a little bit. So yeah. I'm all for moving on from that. All right, let's move on now to the controversy.
Wait, before you get to the controversy, let me just get my 30 seconds and move on from everything. This season is lost. This team has become an embarrassment. It's time to make whatever broad changes you can potentially make. I know that I advocated a couple of weeks ago, don't make a coaching change until after the season. But this season's lost, man. And if you got in mind what you want to do, I'd go for everything at this point in time. I'd do everything I could to tank it.
Well, that's the problem for the Cowboys is that you can't obviously do that, but you have to. You certainly can. I mean, you have a built-in tank, right, with no Dak Prescott, and so that gives you the excuse. Well, we just have to figure out what we can do.
This tank. Have you not seen them play? I mean,
maybe that was it.
They've lost 3 home games by 25 or more points. That's only happened one other time in franchise history. That was their inaugural season.
I guess that
happened since 1960.
I want to ask you about that, David, because look, I know that there were things that the Cowboys didn't do in the offseason. They should have added a running back. But there were I think they should have brought back Stephon Gilmore. I think there were obvious things that you can look at, but that does still not account for how bad the Cowboys are. It just feels like I'm not even saying the team has quit on them. I do think there is an element of the Cowboys. I see this at the University of Texas as well, of when things are good, it steamrolls for them and they play even better. When they're playing well, they start playing great. And when things start to go badly, they play terribly. It just seems like it either goes one direction or the other. There's not a lot of resilience. There's not a lot of fighting back in the third and fourth quarter. I mean, usually if they're getting, just swamped in the first half, they'll come back and put up some points, but it's all, empty and hollow. There's nothing to that kind of comeback in my mind. So I just can't really put my finger on it exactly as to why did this all go so terribly, horribly bad this year?
Well, I think one, their key injuries, and let's go back before Dak, because that's been it was already clear they weren't the team we thought they were going to be when Dak went out. I do think there's something to be said for their top 4 defensive ends haven't been on the field since. And
we saw what happened when they got one of those back. Yeah, that did change things Sunday.
The fact they haven't had a healthy, good, solid second corner. We see Overshown now. Overshown was very erratic early in the season when it was really, remember, this is Overshown's really his rookie season as far as playing because he missed all of last year. The youth on this team, look, to me, they removed their veteran safety net of 7 starters. They just allowed to walk and didn't bring back at all. Didn't want to pay them. And because the top 2 guys in the 2023 draft didn't produce for you, and the top 2 guys in your 2024 draft, one has been hurt and hasn't played in Marshawn Nealand since early in the season, and the other, Guyton, hasn't been a day one solid starter the way Tyler Smith was 2 years ago. I think has really put him in a bind, and you've had deterioration in the offensive line with Terrence Steele and Zach Martin. So I think it's kind of been like a house of cards, or just the dominoes falling here on everything. Every personnel decision that could go the wrong way kind of went the wrong way for them.
Yeah, I think that's a very nice synopsis of that. I think you're exactly right. All right, let's look at what happened, of course, after the game when Jerry Jones had his little confab with the media and had walked off and was out of everything, and then turned around, walked back, and said, talking about the fact that the sun was in CD's eyes, and that's why he missed the touchdown pass and early in the game when it still seemed to matter. And he said, why don't we just tear the damn thing down? Talking about the stadium. And then went off into a thing about the sun and the moon and the stars.
Well, the sun's going to be a year in advance. You have that technology.
If I'm going to be
the moon, Kevin, okay, you can say, but what about the moon?
What about the moon? The tidal pool. There's a tidal pool out there. There's all kinds of effects on the game. The thing about all of that is that too. It's like it was almost a shot at Mike McCarthy's play calling, wasn't it? We know when the sun's going to be here and there, and all I can think is that you've got this poor offensive coordinator, which is Mike McCarthy. I was sitting there thinking that. He's got seconds to think of the next play, right? And he's got to think, no, wait a minute. Where are we on the field? Where's the sun? Oh my gosh. I got to look up. Where's the sun now on the field? That Jerry actually thinks about.
These 4 calls are out of the game plan at this part of the game, depending on where we are on the field and where the sun is.
Exactly. As embarrassing as that loss was, to put that on top of it, and everybody knows Jerry's just a nut, right? Yet when you come out and you just prove it by saying what he did after the game, that just it just piles up too much on top of all that, isn't it? It's just ridiculous. I mean, the whole idea that he can't do that, and I guess we should go back to some of the thinking about when the stadium was built and why the stadium is positioned the way that it is. It has the open ends. They were thinking this will make it look like an outdoor stadium when in fact it
flow from indoor to outdoor flow, which is why they also had the axis aligned with the Rangers stadium. They wanted that, and the whole idea, and this is the lead architect, Brian Truby, talking to him several years ago. He said it was all part of they did this on purpose. They aligned it this way, and that part of the developmental plan was that would create more development opportunities right outside the ring there, with hotels, with restaurants, with entertainment districts. And in developing that, those structures would block the western sun once it was fully developed out. So basically it was like, well, yeah, the sun's going to be an issue for a few years, but when this develops, somebody's going to build something, they'll block it out, so it'll be all good.
Yeah, that's a good plan, isn't it? Maybe Jerry should start building something right now, or maybe a pergola. Or plantation shutters. I'm thinking there's all kinds of possibilities here, things to do. Maybe we're just asking the wrong questions of Jerry.
Well, this game was really, in this season, and this game was really about all of the sins of the father coming home to roost, right?
Yes, they are.
I mean, it was. That was the son. Now, every game there's something where you turn to Jerry, and Jerry's just refusing to acknowledge it, and you go, that's what drives me crazy about Jerry. What fans are saying. That right there. That's why I'm out on these guys. That's why, and of course, and their ratings are still good. And
of course their ratings are good. It's a train wreck. Everybody tunes in to see a train wreck. So, Evan, you've got some numbers for us about when
this is interesting.
When the Cowboys play in early afternoon, late afternoon, and night.
I guess Jerry had some comments this morning as we're taping this on the radio show, talking about more sun stuff. And I think he actually said that the sun is supposed to be an advantage for the Cowboys. Well, so I just went back and looked. The Cowboys, when they play at noon or when they play at 7 in AT&T Stadium, regular season or playoffs, and that counts for about 70% of their games, are 107-68. Very good record. When they play at 3, between 3 and 6, when the setting sun, particularly after November 1st, becomes an issue or becomes more of a factor, they are 29-29. So I would love for Jerry Jones to now explain exactly how the sun is an advantage for him, because game time clearly. Now, look, I also understand that a lot of times your 3 p.m. games are high-profile opponents. But there's a stark difference here in record and performance. And we hear this every year, at least once or twice, particularly after we turn back the clocks, that this is an issue. And it's just stubbornness on Jerry's part and detached from reality.
There's no question it's a stubbornness on Jerry's part. I think also he just doesn't like the aesthetics of having those curtains up there. And then the crazy thing about it is just put them up there for an hour and a half and have somebody take them down when the sun's no longer an issue in the game. Because if they do put curtains up there, or at least there are curtains to be put up there for other events, right? For the WWE and for concerts and for all kinds of other things. They have curtains that you can put up there. He just doesn't want them for the football.
Sounds like you're one of those people that throw oil on the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. How can you spoil this beautiful work of art with curtains?
Does somebody need to tell Jerry, hey, they don't come to see your stadium, they come to see your team win?
It is true. That is the thing about a football stadium. It's not like a baseball stadium. People don't come to see the stadiums. Even though he has all these works of art in his work of art, that is not the reason they come. It is a ridiculous thing, especially when you have CeeDee Lamb saying, when asked after the game, would you be in favor of the curtains being put up? And he said 1,000%. When the player you signed for $130-something million says, yes, I want curtains up there so I don't have to embarrass myself when I'm running through the end zone, I put my hands up and I have no idea where the ball is.
He didn't even put his hands up there. He never saw
it. You're right.
At him. I mean, people were going, "Oh, well, he dropped that." But he didn't drop it. He never saw it. And you see that play again. And from where we were, it looked like I was going like, "Well, what is Jake Ferguson doing?" Because he pulled his arms back real quick. But then you see like, Lamb flashing in the back of the end zone, wide open, no one close to him. But he doesn't even go for the ball because he doesn't see it until after it's by him.
But this all gets back to, I think, what is the core of the issue. An unwillingness to ever admit a mistake and try and fix it. And I think as we get older, and Jerry is certainly in his 80s, we get even more intransient in how we defend our positions. And so you're just dealing with somebody who, in this case, is not willing to accept the reality that something needs to be done to help his football team. And if he's not going to go get a running back, the least he could do is get a set of curtains.
And one other level on that is, what's another criticism? Too often you take the overall value or experience of a Cowboys adventure and you elevate that beyond what helps the team win on the field. This is another example of that.
I want to go back to something he said at the time, David, when you wrote that story in 2017 and when talking to Brian Truby, the architect, about the stadium and the positioning of it, was that Jerry talked about the fact that in Texas Stadium, there was a drop on either side of the end zone because that field was really crowned, right? So in the middle of the field, it was higher than both of the ends, and they used to do that for drainage purposes. But at any rate, he talked about what an advantage that was because there's an 18-inch drop on either side, and we knew where those were, and we used that to our advantage. It's like, that's such a ridiculous argument to make that you are going to create an advantage for yourself on the football field. There's just no way to predict how that's going to work for you, against an opponent. There's no way for you to be able to say, look, I'm going to work this guy into this part of the end zone where the sun's going to be in his eyes, and he can't see it, and I'll catch the ball instead. That's just ridiculous.
But you would think a guy who wants to create an advantage for his football team, there's margins, right? An 18-inch crown and maybe blinding the other team. And then there's things that actually matter, like a running game. I do not understand how he can, he's nowhere. He's off the page. One is inside the margins, one's outside the margins, and Jerry won't acknowledge either of them.
Well, it's hard to take him seriously about all these other issues because we don't always look. When it comes to the salary cap and what you can do and what you can't do and how can you reconstruct this contract, I got to tell you, I don't know well enough the things that you can do to manipulate the cap to make that work. But then when you hear this explanation for why he doesn't put up curtains, it just makes you think, well, then the rest of it doesn't make any sense either. If he can't make sense out of something as simple as this, just pull the damn curtains, okay? Just do that and everything will be fine here. If he can't do that, then why should I trust him on anything else?
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about Micah Parsons because he started a little controversy himself right after the game when he was asked, I believe, by our old friend Jory. That's right, Jory Epstein asked the question about what's the mood in the locker room with the players about the fact that this is Mike McCarthy's last year. And in his answer, he basically started out something that was pretty nice. He said, well, that's above my pay grade, which is what he should say as a player. And then he kind of morphed into something about he felt worse about people like Zach Martin, who may be in the last year of their career, which I don't think that's actually been public knowledge from inside, so that he's kind of announcing that for Zach Martin. That was probably not a great idea to say that. But then he made the comment that the people like Zach Martin who put in way more time than Mike McCarthy ever has.
And the other Zach Martin and the other legends who have worked harder and longer than Mike McCarthy ever will.
Yeah. Probably not a great thing to say right after an embarrassing game like that. And David, you wrote about that and made a great point about the fact that Micah Parsons wants to be thought of as a leader. He's talked about that before the season. I don't think that this podcast is a great idea for him from that standpoint, although it did allow him to come back after receiving a lot of criticism from Rex Ryan and Damian Woody about his comments and throwing, Mike McCarthy under the bus. Look, I don't know exactly what Micah's relationship is with Mike McCarthy. They had a meeting since then to kind of resolve these issues. I think probably what he was doing was being very honest about how players feel about coaches, right? Players are closer to their teammates than they are to coaches. Sure. You can go back. I can remember going to, Tex Schramm's funeral and writing about that and talking to all the players there. And a lot of former Cowboys showed up, but they were all kind of like, yeah, he just screwed us over and over again when we were players. And so there's that feeling. It's not always a warm feeling, right? And so he's more concerned about his teammates than his coach. Then that's okay, but you probably just don't need to voice that.
Well, what was Rex Ryan's defense? Hey, I guarantee you, buddy, coaches work a lot longer than any of you players do. So,
I'm not sure I'm taking a coach's argument on. Yeah. I'm not taking a coach's argument on this stuff. That's a coach sticking up for a coach, and I do agree.
Saying. Yeah,
I do agree with you, Kevin.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that we're making a little bit more of this than probably needs to be. It was poor transitioning on Micah Parsons' part, but I think ultimately his sentiment was, look, I'm more concerned about the guys that I'm in the trenches with every day than my boss, who, even if he gets fired, is probably going to get another job somewhere in the NFL. I think that's pretty honest among players,
It's honest, but it's, as David pointed out, if you're a leader of this team, you got to be careful with the things that you say, and you got to be more careful than that. And Mike is just not.
That's a lesson there. Yes,
there's a way to offer emotional support to your teammates without throwing the head coach under the bus. There are consequences to, as a leader, you have to calculate the consequences to your words in a particular moment. That's not to censor you. That doesn't mean you're not entitled to your opinions, but if you're truly a team guy and thinking, okay, what is best for this team right now, do you make that comment the way you made it?
Yeah. No, there's no question about any of that. So it just adds to the pile that the Cowboys have.
And there'll be something else. I know we need to move on here, but very quickly. So you mentioned the podcast. So Micah went on his podcast yesterday to defend himself. And it was more, he said, look, I didn't throw him under the bus. I've met with him. He understands that wasn't my intent. McCarthy said the same thing yesterday in his press conference. But then when he was going on about Damian Woody and then Rex Ryan, so then he goes on to Rex Ryan. This is my other point on leadership, and then we'll let this go and go to the Rangers here mercifully. He's talking about, and Rex Ryan, well, look, what Rex Ryan said. Rex Ryan just wanted to coach here, right? He wanted to coach here. But I'm perfectly happy with Coach Zimmerman.
Yeah, I love that. Coach Zimmerman. I don't even know his name.
Now, Mike Zimmer's the defensive coordinator who you had breakfast with every day in training camp. And your defense on attacking Rex Ryan is you're perfectly happy with Zimmerman as your defensive coordinator. Leaders know the name of their coaches.
Well, he just calls him Zim. That was good enough. If you were named Zimmerman or Zimmer, you're probably going to be Zim.
Well, he should have gone with Zim then.
Yeah, that was good. And, of course, as David pointed out in his story after the game, they also referred to Tom Landry as Tom Laundry on the video board. Tom Laundry.
Thank you for your service, Mr. Laundry.
Mr. Laundry. Holy cow. This place is just falling apart all around our ears. Unbelievable.
And check back next week for the next episode.
It's a circus.
At Texas Capital, we know that the path to greatness isn't for the faint of heart. It's full of chances and opportunities with no promises. We know because we help clients and communities achieve greatness every day. Texas Capital is a full-service financial services firm founded and headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Our customized solutions were built to keep your business moving forward. Please visit texascapital.com to learn more. That's texascapital.com. Texas Capital is the collective brand name for the Texas Capital Bank and its separate non-affiliate banks and wholly owned subsidiaries. For deposit products, member FDIC.
All right, so let's David has already segued for us to the Rangers. Let's talk about them a little bit here because, Evan, you're going to explain to us what they're trying to do with a fine young Japanese pitcher.
Well, I can't. The arcane rules regarding the posting system would require an entire podcast unto of itself. But
let's do that. Can we?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's just put it this way: the Japanese team, the Chiba Lotte Marines, have agreed to post Roki Sasaki, who is 23 years old, because he wants to come to the United States. There's no doubt he's the next great phenom. Where there is question is, where does he end up? And the way the posting system now works is that players with less than 9 years experience in Japan and who are younger than 25 fall under the auspices of the international free agency pool that is typically where Latin American teenagers sign. So all of that said, he falls into a category where there are caps on what the bonus could be to him, and all that money is already allotted to each team, or at least accounted for each team. And his major league salary for the first year in the big leagues, until he gets a big extension, would be the major league minimum. So the uptake on all this is you got a 23-year-old accomplished pitcher from Japan who's going to come to the United States, and the financial outlay is going to be minimal and already budgeted for every team. So it's like it's a lottery ticket. It's a golden ticket. And the Rangers are very much interested. They're very involved. They've had a long and pretty successful scouting operation in Japan, a lot of which is about building relationships. And I'm confident that in that area, they've had a lot of stability. Josh Boyd, who runs that operation, been with the organization 18 years and spent a lot of time in Japan. They've got two Japanese scouts, Joe Furukawa, who's been there over 15 years, and Haji Watanabe, who's been there over 10 years. They've got some relationships in Japan. All that said, we can rule this out. Sasaki's not coming here for money, at least not initially. He's coming here because he wants to pitch in the U.S. If he's coming here to pitch in the U.S., he wants to win. So if you're going to make a case to Sasaki about joining your team, you've got to make it that he is going to be part of a winning organization. And here's where I think the Rangers need to do work. You can make an argument that if you sign, we've talked all winter about the Rangers not spending a lot of money this winter. I think if you were to go out and get Sasaki, it would be an inducement to go out and get further additions to this team to make it a more contending team. My take on this is you want to get Sasaki, go do that other work first. That will demonstrate to Sasaki that you're serious about contending. Go out and re-sign Nathan Eovaldi and bring Nathan Eovaldi into whatever presentation you make to him and say, look, here's a championship pitcher. He knows what it's like to win a World Series. Nate, what do you think about what we've got going on here? That's my point to the Rangers. You want to go out and sign Sasaki, go out and do the other work and demonstrate you're going to be aggressive first, because this messaging right now that, hey, the most important thing is getting under the CBT threshold, that's not going to send make a case to a player who wants to come here that this is a team that is intent on winning.
I don't think there's any question about that. I think they need to send a sign to everybody. They need to send a sign to their own clubhouse that that's what they want to do. When you say, and I've heard this argument over and over again, well, my gosh, you just don't want to have to pay that tax. It's like, look, there's a price to pay for being good, right? And if you look back on this next season, and if the same thing happens again, where you don't make the playoffs, or even if you make the playoffs and you're a one and out, and you look at it and say, yeah, if we had just done this, if we just added this player or that player, we could have been over the top. And you just say, it's just because the owner didn't want to pay. Look, I think that Ray Davis probably is the most financially secure owner the Rangers have ever had. There's been a succession of bad owners who mostly just were bad because they just didn't have any money. And they couldn't do the things they needed to do. Ray has the capability to do the things he needs to do. It's just a question of whether he wants to do it or not. And that's hard for people to take in this market, right? Because this is a big market and you can make a lot of money in this market with your team, especially if it's a good team, if it's a contending team, and if you're showing some good faith to the to your fans that yes, I'm invested in this team. I want you to be invested in this team, and I want you to know that I'm invested in this team.
And look, if
goodwill goes a long way, and once you squander it and you hit that reset button, it is very hard to get back.
Oh, no question.
Yeah, and you're talking about if you don't sign Sasaki and you don't get aggressive this offseason, you are talking about potentially wasting another year of Corey Seager in his prime, and Josh Young is getting closer to free agency and so forth and so on. I just think that, yes, Roki Sasaki would make a big difference here, and there are so many reasons to make a compelling argument for him to be here, but you can't – and there are financial elements – that would potentially open up if you sign the next great Japanese pitcher, particularly marketing in Japan, with some companies over there, and it might even make the TV deal that you're trying to negotiate right now a little bit more lucrative. So there's reason to say if there was ever a time to quote unquote put the cart before the horse, the cart being the money, now is the time. You've got a chance to win a lottery here for a great player, and just like that syndicate that won the lottery out in the $95 million lottery in Colleyville, what did they do? They bought every possible winning combination. They bought every ticket. What rich people do is they improve their odds. So improve your odds. Go out and do that.
No question about it. Evan, you brought up the TV deal. So we've seen what the Stars and the Mavericks have done with their own TV operations, and now offering that basically free to fans, and they could buy streaming if they want to, if they don't have access to that Tegna station channel, whatever we call that now. What is the update on the Rangers and what they're going to do in TV?
They're still the update is still very general. They are working on their own RSN, and they have a huge territory, and so it requires getting multiple carriage deals done with cable companies because they want to make sure that they're on a linear cable system. Setting up the streaming is not so much of an issue, I don't think. I think that's easier. And I think they want to try and to maximize their revenues, they want to try and do some kind of over-the-air component that they can sell to multiple market TV stations. Maybe a game of the week or something along those lines. So where the Stars and the Rangers, Stars and the Mavericks had to act pretty quickly because the Bally Diamond thing kind of came upon us during the summer. The Rangers have a little bit more time to work with, and they have seen a couple of deals get done with Bally. The Cardinals went back to Bally. I think they lost another $25 million off of what their expected TV take was going to be. The Angels went back to Bally, which is now all FanDuel. I think the Rangers are probably using some of that to potentially gin up their market value or their deal with cable carriers.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep up with all of that.
But I don't foresee this taking place. I don't foresee this being in place before the 1st of December. Maybe not the first of the year.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. All right. Let's take a look over now at college football. We had our first CFP rankings come out last Tuesday, in which Texas was at 5 and SMU was at 12, A&M at 13, Texas A&M at 13. As we're taping this on Tuesday, we're going to have another rankings come out. At this point, I have no doubt in my mind that Texas will move up to 3 after its win over Florida and after the losses by both Georgia and Miami, which were numbers 2 and 4. I think
help SMU a little bit too, right? You would think.
Well, here's the problem for SMU. They'll get leapfrogged by Ole Miss. Ole Miss was behind them and A&M, and we kind of saw that coming, that Ole Miss was probably going to leapfrog a couple of people because that's the way their schedule's set up. And, of course, with their big win over Georgia, they're going to do just that. So there's a feeling that SMU will actually drop. Now, they didn't play last week, and that didn't help their case any. I don't know how much it helps their case Miami losing. Obviously, it helps them it really doesn't help them at all. They were going to play Miami in the ACC title game anyway, right? And they were probably going to have to win that to get in. I don't think the committee was going to take 2 ACC teams. I think that is an issue now. It was a possibility before if Miami had won out, and then this game against SMU was really close, and Miami was fourth. There was a possibility, I think, that maybe we'll take SMU at the bottom of the 12-team playoff. I don't think that's going to happen now. It's just going to be one team from the ACC now, whoever wins that game.
We're at a point where SMU is going to play for the ACC championship. And so they will have to win one game to go to the playoff. And I think if we said that in week 10 of the college football season, if we said that in week 10 of the college football season, SMU could be one win away from going to the college football playoff, we would call this a huge win for them this year.
Well, there's no question it's a huge win, but when you're that close to getting in, it's still like, oh my gosh, we were that close to getting in. I mean, yes, it is a big win over what we expected of SMU this year, but they've played really well. They played great against Pitt in the one big game they really had, and they blew an undefeated team right out of the stadium. So,
well, they've got one loss, and it's to a top 10. They're one top 10 opponent.
And BYU, and that helped SMU's cause that BYU came back to beat Utah in that game the other night. So things are setting up for SMU. I just don't see it in the cards for A&M. Of course, that's a big game between A&M and Texas on November the 30th on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. That's in College Station. These teams can't afford another loss, and nobody can really. I don't know how far Texas would drop at that point. The fact that they are third right now really kind of seems to insulate them somewhat. And obviously there's going to be probably 4 SEC teams in the playoff, just like there'll probably be 4 Big Ten teams in the playoff. So it doesn't leave a lot of margin for error, though. And that's going to be the issue now, is that with the Mountain West, with Boise, if they don't finish in the top 12, then they get to move up as one of the 5 conference champs, because 5 conference champs are going to make the playoffs, and they get automatically moved up, and that can boot somebody at the bottom of the rankings. So you don't want to be ranked in that 10, 11, 12 range right now. You want to be ranked higher than that, because if you're ranked there, you're always going to be in the possibility of getting kicked out. It's going to be very difficult at that point. I do think going forward, as looking at the quarterback situation, Quinn Ewers played very well for Texas on Saturday against Florida. Spun the ball really well. When Arch Manning got into play, with 7 minutes to go in the third quarter, he played the whole rest of the game, was 3 of 6 for 19 yards. Didn't really make a case for himself, or anybody who wants to think that we'd be better off, if you're a Texas fan, if we'd be better off with Arch at quarterback. He does have certain things that he can do that Quinn can't do. He is very big and pretty fast. He rolled out at one point in that game. A defender came up, grabbed him by the arm. He just shook the guy off and then rifled a pass. It was a very nice completion. But that was kind of the one highlight of the game for him. After that, he looked a little confused about where to go with the ball and what Florida was doing. Quinn did not look confused in that game. He made some really nice throws. Florida has some good talent. They're not doing a good job with it, but Florida does have some talent. And I thought that Quinn really reestablished himself. And that is going to be the issue going forward for a team like A&M between Marcel Reed and Connor Wegman. Neither one of those quarterbacks are playing at the level that Ewers is right now. And that's going to be the difference, I think, in these games. Now, you can look at it from the standpoint of the rivalry being restored between A&M and Texas, and it's in College Station at Kyle Field. That place will be rocking. I'll be there for that game. So that is always a factor in what happens and how rattled somebody might get. But at this point, A&M is not showing the enough at quarterback, I think, to upset Texas. We'll see what happens.
And A&M Texas is an elimination game for A&M. If they lose that game, they'll be out of the college football playoff. As it stands to me, I'm just looking at the standings. I feel like the 4 SEC teams are going to be Texas, Tennessee, and I think that'll be your SEC championship game, Alabama and Ole Miss. If Georgia were to upset Tennessee, or Georgia were to beat Tennessee this week, maybe Georgia subs out for Tennessee in the Final Four. But I think that this is an elimination game for Georgia Tennessee this week. Then next week, 2 weeks, A&M Texas is kind of an elimination game for A&M.
What does that say, that Georgia wouldn't make a 12-team playoff? Who would have said that before the season?
This has not been a great. They have not played great by any stretch of the imagination. And the 12-team playoff is, there's going to be teams that are surprises that are in and teams that are surprises that are out.
Well, I tell you, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day about the state of college football now, and I think we have seen everything speed up far faster than we could have imagined because of what has happened already with NIL and how that has affected college football. I think you're seeing the fact that one of the reasons why SMU is playing so well is because they got NIL money. And it has already had an impact on their program, and they're playing well because of that. And if you're looking, one of the things that Nick Saban complained about 2 years ago was that basically there are going to be some programs that can't compete with A&M and Texas and all the money that they have. And I think he's talking about Alabama and Georgia. Those programs don't have the same kind of money behind them, and that just seems crazy to say. That programs like Alabama and Georgia, which have not only been good recently, they're good historically. These have been blue bloods of college football. And if they can't compete with that kind of money, what does that tell you about the future of college football and how the paradigm shift we're going to see in who's in and who's out? Oklahoma already struggling, and as they go forward in the SEC, are they going to become like Arkansas? A program that's going to be marginally competitive and maybe good every once in a while. Because I've heard from people who've said that, Oklahoma doesn't have the money to do that either. And are they going to regret going to the SEC and not staying in the Big 12, or maybe they could be more competitive and have a better chance of winning that league and then getting the automatic bid that comes with it? I mean, there's just going to be a lot of things that happen now over the next few years, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see a big shift here in the power structure of college football. All right. I think that's going to do it for us this week. We appreciate everybody coming out and listening to us. We'll be back next week with more hijinks from the Cowboys and the owner, and who knows what else. Micah Parsons, what he might say on his next podcast.
Can I leave everyone with one thought?
Oh, if it's just one, that's okay.
What about the moon?
What about the moon?
What about the moon and the stars? Maybe we should have a soundtrack with Jerry. It's like a Dean Martin song.